Behind every strong and successful woman is a past she never speaks of. She was born into rejection, raised in pain, and grew up in a home without love. This is the story of Meso, the girl who turned her scars into strength. The hospital hall was quiet, but behind the white walls, a loud cry broke the silence. Nurses rushed in. Doctors shouted. The sound of BP machines filled the air. Moments earlier, a woman named Ogo was rushed in by a midwife and her husband. She was in labor, weak, bleeding, and gasping for breath. Instead of taking her to a proper hospital, her husband, Ibe, had stubbornly taken her to a small maternity home. But Ogo's condition worsened. She slipped into a coma. The midwife panicked and called an ambulance, rushing her to the city hospital. Now, under bright white lights, doctors fought to save her. The doctors performed an emergency C-section on her. Minutes later, the cry of a newborn baby broke through the chaos. August's eyelids fluttered. She was pale and weak. When they placed the tiny bundle in her hands, a tear rolled down her cheek. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "My Meso." Outside the room, Ibe stood with his arms folded, his expression hard. When he heard it was a girl, his jaw tightened. A girl? He hissed. Useless. The doctors approached him and said, "Your wife is lucky to be alive. She had severe complications. If she ever gets pregnant again, she may not survive." Ibe didn't respond. He turned and walked out of the hospital, leaving his wife and newborn behind. Days turned into weeks. Ogo remained in the hospital, recovering slowly. Her body was weak, her heart broken. Ibe never returned. The hospital bills piled up, and she had no family to call. She was alone. One morning, when hope seemed lost, a kind stranger heard her story and quietly cleared her bills. That night, somewhere in a dark, tiny room, a mother cradled her baby and prayed for strength, while a man's heart burned with anger for not getting the son he wanted. And so began the story of Meso, the girl born into a house without love, yet destined to rise above it. Long before Meso was born, her mother Ogo lived in a quiet orphanage on the edge of the city. The building was old, its paint peeling, the roof rusting, but it was the only place Ogo had ever called home. She had no family, no parents nor siblings, only faint memories of being dropped at the orphanage gate as a baby. The kind woman at the orphanage raised her, fed her, clothed her, and gave her shelter. Yet, even with all the care, Ogo carried a deep emptiness, a longing for love. She wanted someone to call her special, someone to make her feel like she mattered. That was when Ibe came into her life. He was the orphanage cleaner. He was 15 years older than Ogo, but he noticed her. He would smile when their eyes met, bringing her roasted corn after work and whispered sweet words that melted the loneliness in her heart. At just 17, Ogo had never known real love. So when Ibe touched her hand and called her beautiful, she believed him. Soon their secret meetings began. Late at night, when everyone slept, Ogo would sneak behind the laundry area where Ibe waited. They talked, laughed, and shared stolen moments in the shadows. What started as innocent affection slowly turned into a secret affair that lasted for months until one morning everything changed. The matron noticed Ogo's sudden sickness, her constant tiredness, and loss of appetite. Suspicions grew, and a pregnancy test was conducted. The result was positive. The news spread like wildfire across the orphanage. The matrons were furious. The management felt disgrace, and when they found out Ibe was responsible, They forced him to marry Ogo immediately. He didn't argue. He stood there, silent, his jaw clenched tightly. But inside, a storm raged. He felt trapped, forced into a life he didn't choose. From that day, everything changed. His smiles disappeared. His gentle tone hardened into cruelty. He blamed Ogo for his misfortune, for ruining his peace. They left the orphanage quietly and moved into a small one-room house at the city edge. Ogo tried to make it a home, cooking, cleaning, praying, and hoping that love would return. But instead of love came pain. The beating started small, a slap here, a shove there, until they became routine. He hit her for talking too much, for keeping quiet, for not being enough. Still, August stayed. When their baby arrived, she named her Meso. She believed the child's birth would calm the storm, but peace never came. Instead, it marks the beginning of a deeper dark storm that will shape the destiny of them all. By the time Meso turned 9, she had learned how to hold back tears. She had learned how to move quietly, clean quietly, and stay out of her father's way. The house was always full of shouting, broken plate, and silence that felt heavy. Her mother, Ogo, looked older than her years. Her once bright smile had faded into a tired, hollow stare. Most days, Ogo worked like her bones hurt, but she never stopped caring for Meso. Meso often asked, "Mama, why don't you leave?" And Ogo would hold her close and whisper, "Because I want you to have a family, even if it's broken." But that dream came with a price. Ibe was never happy with Meso. He called her useless because she was a girl. He would mutter under his breath, "A house full of women, a curse." He wanted a son. He wanted a boy to carry his name. Despite the doctor's warning after Meso's birth, Ibe and his family pressured Ogo to get pregnant again. They told her a woman who couldn't give a man a son was worthless. Ogo was afraid, but more than anything, she wanted to be loved. She wanted Ibe to stop eating her. So she gave in. The pregnancy was hard. Ogo grew weaker each day, but she smiled for Meso. "Soon, you will have a baby brother," she would say. But when the day came, it wasn't a boy. Ogo gave birth to another girl, a beautiful baby with tiny finger and soft cries. But Ogo never got to hold her. She died moments after delivery. The midwife placed the baby in Meso's arms. She looked down at her baby sister and wept. She named her Angole, which means joy. But all Meso felt was pain. At the funeral, Ibe didn't cry. He didn't say a word. He only glared at the baby girl in Meso's arms and hissed, "Take her. She's your problem now." And just like that, Meso at only 11 became a mother to her baby sister. 3 months later, Ibe came home with a new woman, pregnant, dressed in fancy clothes, and smiling like she owns the world. Meso stood by the window with baby Angole in her arms as her father stepped into the house with his new wife. "This is your new mother now," Ibe said without looking at Meso. "Respect her." The woman looked at Meso from head to toes and scoffed. "So this is the housemaid." From that day on, Meso's life became even harder. Ibe no longer spoke to her unless it was to shout, and the new wife, Auntie Ego, treated her worse than death. She would pour dirty water near where Meso slept, throw away her food, and slap her for no reason. "You and this crying baby are just bad luck," Ego would say, waving her long fingers in Meso's face. Ibe pulled Meso out of school. "I can't waste money training a girl. She will just marry and leave," he said. So while other children went to school with books and laughter, Meso stayed home to wash clothes, scrub floors, and cook food she barely tasted. Angole, her baby sister, was always sick. Her small body grew thinner each week. Her cheeks were sunken, her ribs visible, her eyes tired. Meso begged her father many times, "Please, Papa, Angole needs a doctor." But he would grunt and walk away. Ego didn't care either. She would say, "That baby is not mine. Let her cry." One day, Angole was burning with fever. Meso held her close, rocking her, whispering songs their mother used to sing. Still, she got worse. When Meso asked for help again, Ego slapped her so hard she fell to the ground. Then she turned to hit little Angole on the head with her bag. That night, Angole's body went still. Her breathing slowed, and in the dark, with no one else awake, Angole died quietly in Meso's arms. Meso screamed, shook her, begged her to wake up, but it was too late. The only joy left in her life was gone, and the house remained cold and silent. The sun didn't rise in Meso's world the day Angole died. She sat on the bare floor, still holding her baby sister, her face stained with silent tears. Morning came, but no one noticed. Not Ego, who walked past without even a glance. Not Ibe, who barely asked what happened. "Is she dead?" he finally said. "Then bury her, useless girl." Meso couldn't believe her ears. No prayer, no proper goodbye, no sorrow. She wrapped Angole in an old scarf and dug a small hole behind the house, her tiny hands trembling. There was no flowers, no songs, just silence and the sound of death covering her sister's body. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried. I really did." From that day, something in Mesos changed. Her laughter disappeared. Her eyes lost their shine. But deep in her heart, a quiet fire began to burn, a fire to survive. Ibe blamed her for Angole's death. "You killed your sister with your bad luck," he shouted. One morning, Meso sat near the grave, holding a small pieces of paper, a drawing of a hospital. She had made it with charcoal on a torn sheet of cardboard. "I will build a place one day, Angole," she said softly. "A place where girls like us will be safe." But her father had other plans. "You are a curse to this house. Go back to where your mother came from, the orphanage. That's where you belong." He threw her clothes into a nylon bag and dragged her to the gate. "Don't come back." As the gate slammed shut behind her, she looked back one last time at the house with no love, no care, and with swollen eyes and bruised hope. She walked into the streets of the city alone. Meso walked with slow steps under the blazing sun. Her slippers were worn out. People passed her by. Some stared, others ignored her, but none stopped. Her legs were weak. Her stomach rumbled from hunger. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to cry. She walked for hours, unsure where she was going, until she saw a familiar rusty sign, City Hope Orphanage, the place her mother once called home. Meso stood at the gate, unsure if she should go in. She touched the metal bars with trembling fingers. The last time her mother had stood there, she was just a girl like her, young, scared, pregnant and full of dreams. A guard noticed her. "Who are you looking for?" I don't know," Meso whispered. "My name is Meso. My mother, Ogo, grew up here. She gave me the address of this orphanage before she died." The man looked at her with wide eyes. "Ogo? Small Ogo?" He scratched his head. "She was like a little bird, always singing." Then Meso's leg gave up. She collapsed right into the orphanage gate. Everything went dark. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on a soft bed inside the orphanage. A nurse placed a coat cloth on her forehead. "You are safe now," the woman said kindly. Meso burst into tears, the kind she had held in for years. She cried for her mother. She cried for Angole. She cried for the love she never received. The orphanage welcomed her with open arms. But this time, it wasn't her mother's story repeating itself. This time, it was Meso's turn to write a new ending. And though the world had been cruel, she still had something left in her: hope. Meso stayed in the orphanage for months. At first, she hardly spoke. She stared out the window every day, wondering what life would have been if her mother and Angole had lived. But slowly, things began to change. A kind woman named Mrs. Linda worked at the orphanage as a volunteer. One afternoon, she brought Meso a warm meal and sat beside her. "You have beautiful eyes," she said. "They look like someone who has been through a lot, but still carries light." Meso didn't answer. She simply nodded. Mrs. Linda and her husband, Mr. Chris, started visiting Meso every day. They would bring books, clothes, and sometimes sweets. They asked questions gently, never forcing her to speak. And slowly, Meso opened her heart. She told them everything about Ogo, about Angole, about the grave behind the house, and the pain in her chest that wouldn't go away. Mrs. Linda wept. Mr. Chris held Meso's hand and said, "You are not alone anymore." Weeks later, the couple decided to adopt her. Meso moved into a real home. She had her own room with a bed and even a window where she could see the stars. She returned to school. She studied harder than anyone else. She poured all her pain into learning. Her teachers noticed her brilliance. Her new parents encouraged her dreams. At 19, she won a scholarship to study medicine abroad. And at 25, she returned to Nigeria as one of the youngest surgeons in the country. But Meso didn't stop there. She used her savings, her knowledge, and her heart to build something special. A big, beautiful hospital with pink walls and a garden filled with white lilies. She named it Ogo and Angole Memorial Hospital. It was a way of keeping her mother and sister alive, because out of pain, she found purpose, and from the ashes of her past, she became the light for others. The city buzzed with news of a young doctor who had returned from abroad and built a hospital that felt like home. It wasn't just a place for treating sickness, it was a place of healing, warmth, and hope. Ogo and Angole Memorial Hospital became the pride of the state. People traveled from far and wide to be treated there, from the poor to the rich. Everyone was treated with kindness and respect. Meso didn't just stop at medicine. She made it a mission to give every girl a voice, especially the ones who had suffered like she had. She employed orphan girls as cleaners, receptionists, cooks, and even nurses in training. She gave scholarships, mentorship, and most of all, love. Every weekend, she hosted story nights in the hospital garden. Little girls gathered, sitting under the stars as Meso told them stories, not just of fairies and coins, but of real girls who overcame fear and became something great. She also started a foundation named the Angole Dream, named after her little sister. It helped abused and abandoned girls find shelter, education, and new families. The foundation partnered with schools and churches to teach people about protecting children and respecting women. People began calling Meso the girl who became a star. She didn't care about fame All she cared about was making sure no girl ever felt as small, unwanted, and unloved as she once did. News channel told her story. Her face appeared in newspapers, but when asked what her biggest success was, she would always say, "It's every girl who smiles again after thinking she never would." Because even in the deepest darkness, a star can still rise. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. Thunder roared across the city as nurses stretched through the bright hall of Ogo and Angole Memorial Hospital. Two accident victims had just been brought in. They were hit by a truck. Both were unconscious and bleeding. The hospital team worked quickly. A nurse ran to Dr. Meso's office. "Doctor, we need you in the emergency room. It's urgent." Meso stood up without hesitation and followed. She was used to emergencies, but something about this one felt strange. As she entered the emergency room, she looked at the other patient on the stretcher. His face was swollen, bloodied, but familiar. Her heart skipped a beat. Her hands trembled. Then she saw the second victim. He looked just like a younger version of someone she once knew. Before she could speak, she heard a voice wailing in the hallway. "Please save them. Don't let them die." Meso froze. That voice. She walked to the waiting area, her white coat damp with sweat despite the cold rain outside. There, crying and shaking, was her stepmother. She was older now, her beauty faded, her hair untidy. She didn't recognize Meso. "My husband, my son, please help them." The woman begged the receptionist. Meso's leg felt weak. She wanted to speak, to scream, to run, but she said nothing. She turned and walked back to the emergency room. She looked again at the man on the table. Yes, it was him. Ibe, her father. The man who beat her mother, who caused her birth, who let her baby sister die. The man who threw her away like garbage. And her stepbrother, the one born after her mother was gone. Her heart ached, torn between the healer she had become and the broken child she used to be. But she knew what she had to do. She put on her gloves, took a deep breath, and said to the nurses, "Let's begin." The silence in the ICU was deafening. The steady beeping of the machines echoed like whispers of fate. Dr. Mmeso stood over the unconscious bodies of the two accident victims, one older, bruised and scarred, the other young, his breathing shallow and irregular. Her gloved hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the mask over her face. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum of war. The weight of the moment threatened to suffocate her, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. There was no time for emotions. Two lives were hanging by a thread. "Prep the theater for emergency surgery. We may lose them if we delay any second." She led the team like a warrior, her fingers swift, her decision sharp, her soul screaming in silent agony. She did everything in her power to save them both. Hours passed. The elderly man responded. His heartbeat grew steady. His breathing strengthened. He lived. But the younger man, his pulse flickered like a candle in a violent storm. The night's voice was small, trembling. Time of death, 4:27 a.m. Something inside Meso shattered. She closed her eyes slowly, gathering her breath, swallowing the grief that crawled at her chest. When the news reached the waiting room, Meso's stepmother fell to the floor with a scream that tore through the hospital corridors. She beat her chest, clenched her head, screaming as though her soul was being ripped apart. Nurses rushed to her, but no one could hold her pain. 2 days passed before Ibe, the elderly patient, regained consciousness. His first words were a whisper, dry and broken. My son, where is he? His wife stood beside him, tears streaming like rain. She could not speak. He grabbed her by the wrist, desperate. Where's my child? And then she broke. He didn't make it. Ibe's world collapsed at that moment. His voice cracked into a wail that didn't sound human. My son, my future, my name. Who will carry my name? He sobbed uncontrollably, shaking from grief. Dr. Mesa entered the ward quietly. Her presence was calm but powerful. The couple looked up, their hearts bleeding. The father reached for her hand, tears soaking his pillow. Doctor, please, I beg you, save my son. Bring him back. He's all I have. Without him, I am nothing. Please. His voice trembled with desperation, so raw it could break stone. Meso closed her eyes and he held deeply. I tried, she whispered. I fought for him. I didn't give up, but his injuries were too severe. He didn't survive. Silence fell heavy, suffocating. Then slowly, she reached up and removed her mask. Do you remember this face? She asked softly. They looked at her, confused, searching, lost. Both shook their heads. No, we do not know you. The wife stammered. A bitter, heartbroken smile touched Meso's lips. You should, she whispered. Their eyes flickered with panic. I am the girl you called useless. The girl you beat until her bones cracked. The girl you threw outside in the rain like trash. The girl whose mother you killed with your fist and whose baby sister died in her arms while you washed. Ibe's face drained of color. The wife gasped and stumbled backward, holding the wall for support. Meso, she whispered. Yes, Meso said, looking at her father with tearful eyes. The same girl you swore would never become anything. The girl you said was worthless because she was not a son. A tear sliced down her cheek, but she did not wipe it. You believed nothing meaningful could ever come from a girl child, but today, that same girl stood in that operation room and fought to save your life and that of your son. Every child, be it a male or female, is a gift from God, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Ibe's chest heaved as guilt swallowed him whole. His pride collapsed like a house of stone. He wailed like a man shattered, drowning in shame, but he said nothing. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He couldn't. It was his wife who fell to her knees. Please, forgive us. Please. But Mesa stepped back. Her voice was steady, strong, like a woman who had survived fire and rose from it. Forgiveness is not always spoken. Sometimes it is simply letting go. And she turned and walked away. 3 weeks later, Ibe was discharged from the hospital, paralyzed from the waist down. He returned home a shadow of himself. He barely spoke. He wouldn't eat. Shame became his only companion. His name, his pride, his future, gone. One morning, his wife entered their room and screamed. He was lying lifeless on the bed, his hand still gripping an empty bottle of poisonous liquid. They rushed him back to Ogo and Angole Memorial Hospital, but it was too late. Dr. Meso pronounced him dead on arrival. The man who destroyed lives ended his own. That night, Meso stood alone in her office. Her eyes fell on the framed photo of Ogo and little Angole. She smiled softly and whispered, Justice has a voice, and he speaks in silence. Then she turned off the light and walked out peacefully. Lessons from the story. This story teaches us that rejection does not define your worth, it only prepares you for greatness. Meso was born into pain, raised in rejection, and thrown away by those who should have loved her most. Yet, she rose not because life was kind, but because she refused to let pain silence her purpose. To those who see the girl child as nothing, remember this: the world you live in was shaped by women who were once overlooked. The girl you called useless today could become the hope of a generation tomorrow. Never despise a seed simply because it's small. Greatness often begins in quiet suffering, and to every girl who feels forgotten, abandoned, or unloved, wipe your tears. You were not a mistake. You were created for a reason. Don't let their words break you. Let them build your fire. Stay focused. Stay kind. Stay determined. Because one day, the same people who doubted your words will stand in awe of your strength. Let your success become the loudest answers to their rejection. Mesa's story is not just a story. It's a story of every girl who was told she's not enough. And today, it proved that no one can stop a woman who refuses to give up. Thank you so much for watching this story to the very end. Stories like this are not just tales. They are realities many people live in silence, waiting for someone to remind them that their pain can become power. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Your words might give someone else the courage to keep going. Like this video to show your support, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our new inspiring stories. Together, let's build a community that gives the voiceless a voice and turns pain into strength. Your support helps us tell more stories that change lives, because here we don't just tell stories, we heal souls. Until next time, keep believing, keep loving, and keep standing strong. I love you all. God bless you.